Join us as we search Alaska and beyond for mysterious creatures, featuring Beans Baxter and Rob Roy Menzies. This is the Alaska Bigfoot Studies. So we met a new guy at that Anchorage Museum function. We did Trail Tales, which was really fun. We all got to tell Bigfoot stories.
Yeah. Put your hip waders on.
Yeah, but we met this guy, Daniel from the Cryptid Wilderness Research, and he used a term that I hadn't really heard, and he was talking about the different camps, and he said that he kind of falls within the North American Primate camp.
Sure,
that's what he called it.
Yeah.
And then the other is called, what do they call it, the woo factor?
The woo. The more spiritual and paranormal side of it.
Right.
Which is, got the woo factor. It's too bad we have to have camps.
Right.
But they're people that, it's like politics now.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. Well, I'm proud to say that I kind of stay open.
Okay.
I lean towards one thing, but I'm open because I don't know.
So on the spectrum,
where these things come from, or
would you be closer to North American Primate on the spectrum?
I would be more closer to flesh and blood.
Okay.
I think. However, I would say I'm open to the other thing because God knows what's out in the universe and going on, and paranormal stuff and portals and stuff we don't really know about too much. But I tend to believe more there are some kind of an ancient hominid, ancient caveman, basically, a species that's been alive, pretty much just living alongside of us. Yeah. But they live in the deep blue sea, where, deep ocean.
Right.
Compared to us, so it's rare for us to see them or have any interaction with them, but. Yeah. Of course, when we do, it's just unbelievable, so nobody's going to believe it anyway. But I reference the deep blue sea because the sea holds many mysteries still. There's some species down there we just haven't discovered yet because it's impossible. Yeah. Kind of that's what I think these things are. Not that it's impossible, but they do live in environments that are hard to get to. Yep. I don't think that they're impossible. I think that they do come into civilizations. Mm-hmm. I think they watch people. I think they do go through garbage cans once in a while, and especially rural areas. I've read many stories about that. Mm-hmm. But it all kind of, basically what I've gathered on my almost 60 years on this earth, not quite that long listening to Bigfoot stories, but it does seem like these things are flesh and blood. Yeah. Where the woo, I can understand where the woo comes from. Mm-hmm. I hate to use that word, but people have seen some strange things, and then others try to connect things together, and there's so much theories and things out there, but like I have not seen one. I've not seen one come out of a spaceship. I've not seen one come out of a portal. I've heard some things out at Area A that could only be human or one of these things, because animals don't do that kind of thing, what I've heard out there. I could accept if someone said that's a human. Right. And argued with me. That's got to be a human out there, what I'm hearing or what we're hearing out there. Okay, I could accept that. Yeah. Except for the rocks being thrown. No human could throw rocks that big, that far. But besides that, okay. What do I know? I haven't seen one yet. Now, if I see one, game on. It's going. But I've had enough experience out there and talking to people over the decades, and there is something to it, I think. Yeah. I can only say flesh and blood because that's all I can gather from my experience.
And it makes a lot of sense because they leave tracks, handprints,
the real
throw
entity
things.
That get the blood. The stories about hunters shooting them. Yeah. I've heard stories of people shooting them and nothing happens. I've heard opposite. I've heard they see the blood spray just on an animal. Wow. And I don't know. I would tend to. We just heard another story, interesting hunting story. I love the hunting stories, right? Especially when they shoot one. They brought one down, and here we are. We heard another one, and they've got some evidence this time in the beans of a tooth. Yeah. And very interesting story. But you know, right now it's just a story.
Yeah.
But it's a good story.
And so that's why you lean more towards the flesh and blood North American primate because of the sounds you hear, the footprint.
They make sounds. That all makes sense. I mean, the things that they do, their behaviors are very primate, very almost human primate. Kind of like us humans if we moved into the woods.
Yeah.
That's probably things we would start doing. The whistling, the tree knocks, that's communication.
Yeah.
By these primitive beings, it just makes kind of sense in a way.
Yeah.
You know, to go as far as, you know, people see them disappear. Maybe it's a fur thing. Maybe they have some kind of ability or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's fun to guess and think about, but
Yeah.
if it's true or not, I don't know. But I tend to think, flesh and blood.
What about the theory that they collect the bones of their dead or do something with it? Because some people have said that. That's why we haven't found any.
If they're that intelligent, and why not? Maybe they have little, they certainly probably feel sorrow. You know, it sounds like it. I mean, they're smart enough to throw rocks at us and try to drive us out of their area.
Yeah.
What's to say they don't have sorrow and little, you know, celebrations of life sort of thing and bury their dead? I've heard they eat their dead.
I've heard that too,
God, it was one story, I don't know if it's true, I think it was written. It was on a podcast, but it was where I think it was a fly fishing charter in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Came around a channel or something in their little boat, and these two large male Sasquatches were fighting.
Oh, wow.
And literally the one was losing, and the other one killed it, or mortally wounded it. And when they were all done, they said, now this is a story, let me tell you. First of all, I'm not saying this is true.
Right.
But they said when they were done, the one Squatch was just done. It was half in the water just laying there.
Yeah.
He said 2 other Sasquatches came out of the woods after the fight was over.
Yeah.
And the 3 remaining, the one who was in battle and the other 2 that came out, proceeded to pummel this dead Sasquatch just to pieces.
Wow.
Beating him against trees, smashed him to pieces.
Tenderizing.
And just there's nothing left.
Wow.
I don't know. It's a cool story, but
yeah.
So anyway, but I know that plants the idea that, well, maybe they do destroy themselves. Maybe they do bury themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a simple reason why we don't find a body.
They don't want to be found. It seems like
Yeah, it seems like if they don't want to be found, then maybe they know if their tracks, someone will follow their tracks. They know what footprints lead to.
Yeah.
Maybe the same, they know what a body would lead to too, so they just dispose of it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's in their culture. Maybe it's been in their culture forever.
Right.
They just bury their dead or eat them.
Yeah.
But we can only guess and have these conversations about it until something real comes out.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and I've been waiting a long time.
Yeah.
Something's got to happen.
Something does.
Yeah.
So check out the Bigfoot Art Gallery on Facebook, and people can even order prints.
Yeah.
All right.
So anybody that's followed me for any length of time knows that I'm fairly entrenched in the flesh and blood side of the woo versus flesh and blood debate. I just feel that Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is often the truth, is that it's a unknown primate running around in the woods. It just makes more sense to me than some kind of a supernatural creature or something from outer space or something like that. It just fits. It just, my gut instinct as an investigator tells me that's what's going on. However, I will say that 2 things can be true at once. And when you look at a lot of Native American legends and lore and beliefs, and you keep seeing the persistent belief in like a trickster entity or coyote or just what, all the tribes pretty much have some kind of like trickster entity, and not just Native American tribes, like all over the world. There's stories of like trickster type entities, and one of the things that's attributed to these trickster entities is that they can shapeshift. They can take other forms. So if they can turn into a coyote or a raven or a bear or a moose, why wouldn't they be able to turn into another animal like the Sasquatch? So maybe two things are true at the same time. Maybe there's an unknown primate that is extremely good at remaining hidden and staying away from humans and from being discovered. And there's some sort of entity or trickster out there that can occasionally take the form of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. And that's where a lot of the woo encounters come from. Bigfoot's entering and exiting through portals or turning into balls of light and things like that. Who's to say that that's not attributed to, something taking the form of a Bigfoot and just having a little fun with the humans, maybe they know what we know, that bears and ravens and owls and other such animals are just that, animals, but they know that we don't know anything about Sasquatch. So when they turn into a Sasquatch, that's their opportunity to have a little bit of fun with us and wreak some havoc, as it were, and pop in and out of portals. So I don't know. It's just a theory. But in my mind, like I said, Occam's razor is the one that makes the most sense. Sasquatch is just an ordinary animal, and, well, not necessarily ordinary, but is a flesh and blood animal. And maybe some of the more woo or fantastical accounts are something else. Something wanting us to think that it's a Sasquatch. But those are my thoughts on that.
All right. Well, I'm here with Daniel from the Cryptid Wilderness Research podcast. He gave me some swag. He was a speaker at the Anchorage Museum for the Trail Tales event that I did with some fellow Bigfoot people. Really happy to meet you and excited to do some work with you. But tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So we started the Cryptid Wilderness Research podcast probably about a year or so ago, and started out small, and we're still learning as we go along, but our subscriber base has started to build very significantly. We're very thankful for that. But the best part of doing the podcast has been to meet other researchers like yourself and others. And we've actually built what we call the Cryptid Wilderness Research Network, where we're connecting with other researchers from around the country. And we're just a group of researchers that can bounce ideas off each other and offer mentorship to each other and just support each other, because it's hard going it alone out there. But yeah, the podcast is doing well. And but that's been the best part, is being able to meet other people and other researchers and being able to learn. But that's been the best part of it.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw a link up, a card to their channel. So be sure to subscribe to them here on YouTube. But this week we're talking about, and I love this term because I hadn't really heard it before, but when I met you, you were talking about the North American primate idea or camp versus the woo factor, which I have heard. And so this week's video is on North American primate theory versus the paranormal / alien / Nephilim / other dimensional theory. And I just wanted to kind of get what your thoughts were and where you kind of are on that spectrum.
Well, as part of our CWR network, we have people that are on the woo side of the house. We have people that are on the North American primate side of the house. We have people that are on the Nephilim connection side of the house, and others, the interdimensional and everywhere in between. And the best part of it is we can all learn something from each other and be respectful of each other's theories and opinions. So for me, personally, I have been on the fence a lot about North American primate versus Nephilim connection. And I think there are good cases that can be made for both.
Hmm.
Um, certainly, I've, in fact, one of the big pictures that I actually took in Arkansas, it looks like you're looking at some type of gorilla almost, like you're looking at some type of primate. And,
Yeah.
and we have found tracks that are very similar to primate tracks. And then on the Nephilim side of the house, the Nephilim connection, I think it's possible, that these creatures can be maybe a diluted form of Nephilim, maybe a descendant. It's told that some have supernatural abilities and capabilities, such as mind speak and other things. Portals, etc. And given knowing what I know about Genesis 6 and the Nephilim, and given their massive size and massive strength, they're bigger than us, stronger than us, far more intelligent than us. It's hard for me to divorce the characteristics of a Sasquatch and the characteristics that we know to have existed with the Nephilim. So I'm really on that fence line with
Yeah.
Nephilim connection versus North American primate.
And I'm right there with you. I think I waver in between. I think in some certain areas, I think it's just a flesh and blood giant primate. But in certain areas, I do think it's something strange is going on, some kind of high strangeness. And the idea of the Nephilim, especially like for European Sasquatch and Sasquatch in the Middle East, makes a lot of sense because they're certainly giants. So I do like that idea as well.
Yeah, on November 2nd, we're actually going to have filmmaker and author L.A. Marzulli on our podcast, and he is very strong in the Nephilim connection
Interesting.
camp. So we're hoping to learn a lot from L.A. Marzulli when we have him on and be able to delve further in this. But yeah, it's very, very hard for me to divorce some of the characteristics of Sasquatch from that Nephilim connection. And then, like we said, there's always a strong case to be made for North American primate as well.
Yeah. What do you think of the idea of like different kinds of Bigfoot in different regions and maybe they have different origins?
Yeah, I think that's quite a possibility. Um, even you hear such stories of such varying physical characteristics as well as behavioral. Like
Hmm.
we know here in Alaska, behavioral wise, a lot of them have a reputation for being more aggressive,
Yeah.
while in the lower 48 near bigger population centers. When I say bigger population centers, that could mean a small town even. They're used to being around humans. We also hear about physical characteristic differences as well. For example, up here in Alaska and up in the Pacific Northwest, just massive, massive creatures, and also
Hmm.
in other parts of the country. But then I've heard accounts from Florida
Right.
where they're thinner and scrawnier and scruffier, so to
Right.
say. So you get those different physical characteristics as well.
And the short ones. What what kind of abilities have you heard just researching Sasquatch that they've had?
In talking to people myself, I can say probably the biggest supernatural ability, and I call it supernatural, some people might not, would be the mind speak.
Okay.
And people that I've spoken to who do it, you know, uh, claim it wasn't something that they were looking for. It was just something that happened, and it was quite startling when it did. And an experience will always outweigh an opinion.
And is
So
that telepathy? What is mind speak?
mind speak is, yeah, a telepathy would be a good way to define it. And communication via mental telepathy and not verbal
Okay.
communication. So in that's probably the supernatural ability that I've heard mentioned the most from the people I've spoken to. Now, others have told me about portals, also
Mhm.
about their ability to go through portals. And we were talking to a researcher from Ohio recently, who is also a tracker, and he's had a couple of occasions where he's tracked these animals where their tracks just vanish,
Yeah.
without a trace. And when an experienced tracker tells you that, that has a lot of weight. So it certainly could lend some credence to the theory that some are able to travel through portals.
And I love that theory. Shout out to Jomo and the interdimensional connection. I've always said that I believe Louis L'Amour was trying to tell us something in the last book he wrote, The Haunted Mesa, because he went his whole life writing these cowboy westerns. And then suddenly he writes this weird novel, the last one before he died, called The Haunted Mesa, where it was based in the Southwest. And there was these Kiva portals that these would go through, and you go through the portal in the wall, and you're suddenly in this rainforest world that's covered in clouds and massive trees, and there's huge Sasquatch creatures. It's just so odd that he would write a story like that. And I truly believe he was trying to tell something before he died. But I always think of that when I hear people talking about portals and interdimensional travel. It's just fascinating. I love that aspect of the research.
Yeah, people that I've spoken to, and I'm sure you have as well. Um, a lot of times they either didn't believe that this creature existed or didn't
Mhm.
believe that the creature had the ability, such as mind speak. And
Right.
it completely changes their paradigm. It completely changes their lives when something that was myth 1 second automatically is now reality right in front of your face. That can be a very traumatic experience, as well as experiencing something like mind speak, because
Yeah.
we're not programmed to be ready for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But in talking to so many people that have experienced it, obviously there's something there.
That is so cool. I haven't heard the mind speak before, so I want to learn more about that. I've heard of them being able to stun people. Some people say it's an electric shock. Other people say it's like a sound vibration that they hear in their chest when the Bigfoot is roaring. I've always thought that was really interesting. And then their ability to vanish or use like a predator style cloaking system on their fur where they just kind of blend into the background is kind of interesting too.
Yeah, the second thing other than mind speak, number 2 would be accounts of infrasound that I've heard.
Okay.
And I've talked to people who've actually claimed to have experienced it, and
Hmm.
to a severe level where they're sick for days. And it
Wow.
just is like, they've described it as just being like stunned, you know, and some have experienced it on a severe level while others have experienced it mildly. And that's another phenomenon about this area of study that you find people have experienced. People have experienced the mind speak. People have experienced the infrasound. So
Hmm.
again, that's not something they were expecting either. But
And so
when you're
the
sick for 2 days as
infrasound,
a result, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so they're feeling like really high powered sound waves.
Yeah, they haven't told me of any audible sounds that they've actually heard,
Hmm.
but, or one individual specifically described it as walking into sound waves that you can't hear, but it
Wow.
almost like a stunning, like if you're a Star Trek fan, almost like
Right.
getting hit with the phaser on stun, you know?
Interesting.
Well, actually, it's happened to, 2 of my partners in Arkansas. They've actually experienced it where they've gotten physically ill as a
Hmm.
result. So, So yeah, it hits close to home when it's happened to your own partners.
Wow, that almost sounds like the Havana syndrome of, the government supposedly using those sound waves.
Oh, right, right.
And those were silent too. So that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a phenomenon that goes along with this area of study that can't be ignored. It's happened to so many people. It's a reality. But and
Awesome.
again, the effect people told me that, I didn't think these creatures could do this. I'd heard about it, but until it happened to me, I didn't think
Right.
it was reality. But then they got a big dose of reality when it happened to them.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for weighing in, and we will see you on future episodes. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chuke. I really appreciate you for having me on, and we'll talk to you again. Definitely. Thanks, man.
Awesome.